my name is Dan Airey, and you're very welcome to Oracle Digital in East Point Business Park. Today I'm joined by Grainne from the Crumlin Medical Research Foundation. She is the head of philanthropy and corporate partnerships. Thank you very much for joining me, Grainne.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Today we're going to talk a little bit about the Crumlin Medical Research Foundation. So I suppose to begin with, what is Crumlin Medical Research Foundation?
So you probably know us as CMRF Crumlin, which stands for the Crumlin Medical Research Foundation. And we are in existence to provide vital funding to Our Lady's Children's Hospital in Crumlin and to the NCRC, which is the National Children's Research Centre.
Perfect. Okay, so why is the research that you do important?
So research is vitally important, and especially in the area of children, like paediatric research, because children aren't young adults, so their system doesn't respond the same way to drugs as adults do. And what tends to happen is that, for example, if a child is diagnosed with cancer, they're giving chemotherapy that an adult would be given, and the idea is to kill the cancer, and that's what we need to do. But it has a knock-on effect as they grow up, as they become adults, they can suffer different issues from that. So one of the areas that we concentrate on is in oncology, obviously cardiology and immunology. And the researchers are looking at ways to make treatments better for children, you know, for their makeup and their body. So it's personalising treatments. So a lot of work goes into that. It also goes into technical and medical equipment that can potentially be used. So, for example, with a little heart, they're looking at they're trying to develop a stent that will grow with the child and grow with their heart, as opposed to down the line the child having to have open heart surgery as an adult. So there's loads of really exciting projects happening at the moment. There's a lot of research going on in the area of obesity as well in children, which is kind of an epidemic almost in Ireland. So
yeah, it's quite relevant as it is
totally
at the minute.
Yeah, absolutely. So so there's loads of really exciting projects happening. It's so important that we continue to invest in research. Only 2% of government funding is put into paediatric research. It's a very small amount. 2%. Yeah, it's really small. Yeah.
Not enough at all.
No.
So for our international audience, I suppose, just to give them a flavour, what are the type of profile for patients in Crumlin? What kind of profile are we looking at?
So Crumlin is a children's hospital based in Dublin. So we facilitate patients, just children. So from newborn babies up to 18, and from 18 then they go into the adult services. So it ranges from literally 1 day olds to narky teenagers at 18 that are passed over. But that's the range, and there's over 150,000 children that go in and out of Crumlin each year.
Wow.
Yeah, which is massive. So in the next 5 years, there'll be over 500,000 people attending, or 500,000 children attending Crumlin.
And do you have a success story from the research that you've done?
Actually, a story that would spring to mind is a lady, I'm sure she won't mind me mentioning her name, is Noreen Doyle. And she has 4 children, and one of them, when he was young, one of her sons was diagnosed with cancer, with leukemia, and he went through the treatment process in Our Lady's Children's Hospital, and thankfully he came out the other end of it. And then her 4th child started saying she was tired, and she started getting a bit lethargic, and Noreen recognised the symptoms almost straight away, so she brought her immediately to the doctor, and she was brought into Crumlin, and unfortunately her little girl had leukemia also. So can you imagine, of 4 children, 2 of them are diagnosed with cancer? It's just heartbreaking. But luckily and thankfully with her little girl, because of the research that had gone on in the intermittent years between her son being diagnosed, her treatment was shorter and less severe on her system. Mm-hmm. So that's that's a prime example of how research works.
And I suppose something that I've noticed from the videos that you sent us is that these kids that go in for the treatment is the fact that they're so innocent.
Oh, absolutely.
And that they don't know any different, I suppose.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's just, I suppose, it's hard to see, but in the same breath, it's also great that they're being able to remain so positive.
Totally. And children are, I think, more resilient than adults because, like you said, they just get on with it, do you know, because they don't know any different. So
Absolutely,
they
yeah.
have to, and that's what's so magical about them. You know, it's so magical about the hospital is just that kind of positivity that's in there that, you know, mightn't be as present in adult hospitals because, you know, it just isn't. You know?
It's just kind of a job when you go in
Yeah,
as an
exactly.
adult. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was definitely something that kind of struck me, was just that they're they look at their situation and it's so simple. You know, there's no kind of there's now, and I suppose as adults we can kind of look at that and maybe learn from it in some
Absolutely.
instances.
Yeah.
So I suppose you mentioned oncology earlier on. But would there be two kind of main areas that your research would focus on?
Um, well, the areas that they're focusing on currently, so the different projects that are going on, are grouped into oncology, which is cancer, cardiology, heart disease in particular, and immunology. And immunology and cystic fibrosis. Immunology would fall under CF would fall under immunology. So immunology is the effects of your immune system and how it combats certain diseases, essentially. So it's a very broad kind of spectrum.
Right.
So they're the three main areas that the research is happening in. And in fact, in terms of CF, I know I mentioned there, Ireland will be a world leader in terms of research that's happening on the grounds of Crumlin in the NCRC. So yeah, proud of that.
That sounds really good. And is it are you finding like regular progress from the research, that, or is it kind of slower, taking time, or does it
Yeah.
depend kind
Well,
of?
I suppose research, it depends, you're right. Yeah, it depends on the project or it depends on the research project and it depends on the results that they're getting. And research does take, as its nature, takes quite a long time. So we talk about often bench to bedside. So the bench in the lab to the bedside where it's affecting a child. So it depends on the area and it depends on what they're researching in terms of time frame.
Absolutely. But I suppose you mentioned the cystic fibrosis being, one of Ireland being one of the leading
Yeah.
uh, countries. So I suppose that would be one of the main, as you mentioned.
That would be an area, absolutely. So they've created in the NCRC biobanks, and essentially what that does is they monitor a child that has CF as they progress throughout their life, and they take different samples from each child at different points along their life essentially, and then they analyse them to see. I'm not a medic now, so I don't want to be giving false information in terms of what they do, but they're analysing the cells and see how they grow or respond to treatment throughout their life span. So yeah, it's a good marker for the rest of the world to kind of. Well,
Definitely.
Ireland actually has the highest instance of CF in the world, so which isn't, yeah, it's one of
Not
those
the
stats.
nicest
No, it's not the
statistic
nicest stat, is it?
Definitely not.
No.
And I just noticed we were talking earlier on about success stories that you've had. Is there a process that you go by after somebody has kind of come out the other side, that they can check in with you and
Yeah. Well, we, as the foundation attached to the hospital, we find that people get in touch with us often. So we have regular Facebook posts or social media posts where we're kind of, highlighting a story, for example. And parents of children, of sick children, are just amazing. Like they want to spread the word about how, their success story, and they're not always success stories. They're very difficult and sad stories to hear sometimes. But
Yeah.
parents feel the need to put that word out there so that people will raise money and raise funds.
And like I don't know whether you'd agree, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think with a lot of donations in general, and sometimes with something like this, there can be an element of desensitization to it, in that people can forget that there are people attached to it. And I suppose in this instance it is young children who are innocent, and that they don't, as we mentioned before, they don't know any different, and they just want to live as much as they can. So yeah, it does put a lot of things into perspective. And just as you mentioned about donating and raising money, is there anywhere in particular that people can go to donate?
To donate. So we have committed, the foundation has committed to raise in and around 12 million this year. And we kind of divide that between 11.5 and 12 million between the NCRC and the hospital. So we'd have maybe 5.5 to the hospital and 6 towards the National Children's Research Centre. So the best way to donate and get involved is we have many different avenues. So for example, companies like Oracle can get involved, hold an event, and online fundraising is very popular. You know, the Just Giving pages. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but we have them set up, and you can choose CMRF as a charity to use there, and you can post them then on your social media channels, which I know from, you know, scrolling through my own Facebook, you know, when you see something, you're like, oh, that's great, and you tend to donate to them. So that's a really good and easy way for us to track income and to get income into the foundation. But the old methods of the sponsorship cards, you know, sponsor me a line, they're very effective.
Sometimes the old ways are the best.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like holding an event, bag packing, like the oldies are goodies. So like a cake sale, for example, in work, or there's loads of different ways to get involved. I mean, the cycle that Oracle are doing from Dublin to Galway is like, that's extreme. Like, as in, it's so brilliant. You know, it's like a massive distance. It's a huge challenge. So yeah, I really hope everybody gets behind that, because it's a great event. We really appreciate being the chosen charity for it. Yeah, it's brilliant.
So you were saying earlier on, Grainne, about the 12 million that is split between the NCRC and the CRC. Mm-hmm. What exactly, so people, I suppose, know what they're donating to, what does that money go towards exactly?
So in the hospital, we fund vital medical equipment. So where there's a shortfall from the HSE essentially not providing the money that's needed, we kind of step in. So we would get a list at the beginning of the year from the hospital letting us know what equipment is needed. So then we'd fundraise for that. Another thing that we invest money in is the wraparound services for patients. So Janet, you touched on the fact that children are so innocent, and they can sometimes be in hospital for a very long time, and we don't want to rob them of their childhood, and that's what can happen if they're in that environment for too long. So we provide funding for a thing called the Giggle Fund. This is an example, and money from the fundraising money goes into this fund, and that fund provides birthday parties, presents, books, you know, different things, nice things for the kids.
So it makes it more natural.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. Yeah. And that's the core of everything that we do. We're trying to save lives of sick children and help them when they're in the hospital. And then also, in terms of funding, so we look at refurbishing different parts of the hospital too. So there's 2 areas in particular this year, which is the outpatients department, and there's a ward called the Nazareth ward as well. Now, neither of these wards have been touched since the hospital was opened in the 60s. So the outpatients department is very uncomfortable for children, and there's high volumes coming in each day for different appointments. So the foundation would like to improve that area this year, actually. And then the Nazareth ward is the newborn baby ward, and it's a very kind of dark, and I mean, it's a lovely ward, but it's very dark, and it needs to be refurbished.
It has a negative connotation to it.
Slightly, and parents are sharing rooms and so on. So we'd like to refurbish that also. And another really vitally important thing that we do over in the hospital is we have a room. It's a complementary therapy room for children. At the moment, it's just for children with cancer. And there's a lovely nurse there called Olive, and she provides complementary therapy. So it's vitally important for cancer patients because they're in a lot of pain, and sometimes this is like a little oasis of calm within the hospital. It's a really beautiful room. So she will give like massages, and, you know, it helps them to kind of to cope with what's happening. So
it's kind of a distraction almost.
Yeah, exactly. And it's actually called the Judy Wren room. And Judy Wren was a little girl. Her mum is a lady called Esther Wren, and Judy sadly passed away when she was 8 years old. So her mum, Esther, wanted to create something in her memory, and she created this complementary therapy room. So that's where all the funds for the hospital go, and then the 6 million will be going into the research projects that are happening in the NCRC into paediatric research.
So it'll be split evenly between
More or less.
between the two.
Yeah, our target is between 11.5 and 6 and 12 million even. So it depends on what we bring in. So it's down to individuals and companies that are fundraising so that we can bring that kind of money in.
So at the end of the day, it's down to people's generosity
Yeah.
to see how much of this can be achieved, and from listening to it, it is all vitally important.
Yes.
Absolutely, and I just commend you for all the work that you're doing. It's imperative, and it's to hear some of these stories that we mentioned about earlier on. It's amazing to. You did mention, obviously there is the sad side to the story, but when you see a story that is positive, it's just absolutely incredible. So I would
Heartwarming.
urge I would urge anybody listening or watching to go and donate whatever you can.
I would too.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Grainne.
Thanks,
It's been
William.
a pleasure talking to
too.
you. So I've been Dan Airey, and we'll talk to you very soon. So we're now joined by Ronan. Thank you very much for joining us, Ronan.
Thanks, Daniel.
So you are somebody who has benefited from CMRF's research. So
Yeah,
would you like to go through your story?
Sure. Okay, so the story involves our youngest of three, Finn, and in late 2017 at a standard public health screening, the nurse picked up a murmur and asked my wife Danielle what have the doctors said about his murmur, to which Danielle said, "What?" And following on from that, it was decided that we needed to go and see a cardiologist in Our Lady's Hospital, Crumlin. So 2nd of January last year, we had that appointment. We brought Finn in to see Dr. Orla Franklin, who's his cardiologist. And so we were in there for a few minutes, and Dr. Franklin said, "Okay, can you hold him still? There is something here that I need to investigate more closely," which is a fairly shocking moment for any parent.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so she did a thorough exam on him, and it turned out that he had two separate heart conditions that were kind of masking the symptoms of each other. So he had a large hole between the two largest chambers of the heart, and then he had something called complex branch pulmonary stenosis, which means basically that the arteries from his heart to his lungs were much narrower than they should have been. So if either situation wasn't in place, he would have been a very sick boy. But the larger pressure from the heart meant that the blood actually could get through the narrower passageways to his heart, so that's why it hadn't been picked up sooner. But we got to, with this cardiologist, we got to the bottom of the fact that he would need to have open heart surgery within the following few months, because it wasn't a situation that could continue.
Okay, so that was the next step for you guys then, was the surgery.
Yeah, exactly. So we were told we'd be contacted based on waiting lists and emergency cases that may need to jump in front of your case, because as I said, we were very lucky with the fact that Finn actually wasn't demonstrating too many symptoms. He was fairly well for somebody with those conditions, and he was, as time went by, in the next couple of months, we could see that he wasn't quite developing as fast as a normal kid his age. He wasn't yet walking at 17 months, that kind of thing. And so we eventually we heard within the next couple of months that it was likely to be in around June time for his surgery. So we were told that we were going to be spending 14 days with him in the hospital, and so we were very, very lucky that the the hospital has got a fairly new heart centre, which was funded by CMRF. And this has state-of-the-art equipment. The place where his surgery took place is a hybrid surgery theatre. So in the past, it would have been the case where they would have had to fix one or other of the issues first,
Right.
and then do a follow-up surgery. But we're very lucky that the surgery, the theatre that's there, is able to carry out both surgeries all at once. So it's much less impact for the kids that have to go for major surgeries there. And Finn was a beneficiary of that for sure. So we had his two surgeons were Professor Mark Redmond and Professor Damien Kenny. And Professor Redmond handled closing the hole in his heart while he was on bypass. And then, it was the other way around. The stents took place first, so it was decided that Professor Kenny would implant some stents in Finn's pulmonary arteries to widen them out, so they'd be able to allow the blood flow through from the lower pressure that would be in his heart once the hole was healed up.
Okay.
So they did the stents first, and then within the same surgery, it was a 9.5-hour surgery altogether.
Wow, that's actually something I was going to ask you. Yeah, because it sounds particularly complicated.
Yeah, it was very, very complex, and having to keep yourself busy and try and not be anxious for the full 9.5 hours is a difficult feat. But we were guided through the whole thing by the cardiac nurses. There's an amazing team of cardiac nurses in the heart centre in Our Lady's Hospital Crumlin, and so they kept us up to date every hour and a half. They'd give us a call and just let us know that everything was progressing as planned, which is a huge comfort when you're waiting around for that long.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Were you the kind of people that would want to know everything that was happening before the surgery itself happened?
Yeah, I'm fairly detail oriented, and I would
Right.
I wanted to understand exactly what was going to happen. As it was, you just can't be that precise about it.
Yeah.
In advance. The surgeons are experts, and they've trained in hospitals all over the world. They're truly amazing people, and you have to put your trust in them. And as it was, Professor Kenny decided to do a very unusual stent approach in Finn's case, because there was what he described as a Y-shaped junction in the pulmonary arteries, and he had to figure out a way to try and stent that junction. So he put a stent in across the junction and drilled a hole through up to make the Y, and then placed another stent.
Wow.
It's totally
completely
incredible stuff.
That in itself sounds ridiculously complicated. So
Yeah.
I commend the surgeons for going ahead with. And just, I suppose, from now, how is Finn doing right now?
He's doing amazing. I mean, we were told we would be in the hospital with him for about 14 days afterwards.
Right.
After 3 or 4 days, his chest drains came out. That's a necessary part of the procedure with a chest surgery. And he was standing up in his cot, throwing a ball to me and, wanting to read books. And on the 5th day, they decided that he could actually go home.
Oh, brilliant.
So, instead of 14 days, we were home in 5 days with him.
Excellent.
It was incredible. I mean, he bounced back so quickly because they did such a great job on him.
That's brilliant. Yeah. And I suppose we've heard from the kids' perspective in terms of how this research has helped, but I suppose from your perspective as a parent, how has all of this helped you, and how have Crumlin helped you deal with your situation, I suppose, if that's the right way to phrase it.
Yeah, well, you always have that backup there, and that confidence that you're working well. I mean, there's some of the best medical professionals in the world are looking after your child, and it's incredible. And I know that they're doing research at the moment in the National Children's Research Centre, where they're looking at things like bioresorbable materials. So instead of having a metal stent, it'll be something that will grow with the child for a number of years, and then it just becomes absorbed into the body's cells, or something like that. But like these are the boundaries that they're pushing.
Yeah.
You know, and it's all thanks to the funding from CMRF.
So I suppose you mentioned there about Finn's operation and the incredible detail involved in it. So I suppose if we go to today, how is Finn doing right now?
He's doing fantastic. I mean, he wasn't walking at 17 months, and within 3 weeks after the operation, he was up on his feet. And, you know, he's running around the place picking fights with his big brother and sister. So he couldn't be doing better. I mean, he'll have a cardiologist all his life. That's just the way it goes with that. But like I said, we have the utmost confidence in the people at Our Lady's Hospital Crumlin, and he couldn't be in better hands.
Brilliant. That's absolutely fantastic to hear. Thank you very, very much, Ronan. And from myself and everybody here at Oracle, we wish you and your family all the best in the future.
Thanks very much, Daniel.